What if that nagging feeling in the back of your neck was real? What if those hands reaching out from the dark that you believed were there were there? What if the monster in the basement really existed? And what if there was really something under the bed? Would you have the courage to face your fears?
Hello, brave souls. I've been watching a bunch of those Fear Street shows or the movies on Netflix lately, and I felt like I wanted to write a zombie style version of something like that. At least that style of story. So I came up with The Night Shift at Shadowbrook Storage. The fluorescent lights hummed their familiar tune as Maya Rodriguez clocked in for another night shift at Shadowbrook Storage. The digital display on the time clock read 11:47 p.m., and she was already 13 minutes late. Again. Cutting it close, Maya, called out Derek from behind the front desk, not looking up from his phone. At 19, Derek was only a year younger than Maya, but he acted like he owned the place just because his dad was the facility manager. You know the rules about punctuality. Maya grabbed her flashlight and ring of keys from the employee locker. Yeah, well, some of us don't get driven to work by Daddy in a BMW. Derek's face reddened, but before he could respond, Maya was already heading toward the back corridors. She preferred working alone anyway, especially on the night shift. Shadowbrook Storage was a sprawling complex of concrete buildings and outdoor units that stretched across 12 acres at the outskirts of town. During the day, it buzzed with activity. People moving in and out, trucks loading and unloading, kids riding bikes at the wider aisles. But at night, it became something entirely different. Something quieter. Something watching. Maya had been working here for 8 months, ever since she graduated high school and decided to take a gap year between college. The job wasn't glamorous, mostly checking locks, doing security rounds, and dealing with the occasional break-in attempt. But it paid decent money for someone with no experience, and the night shift meant fewer people to deal with. She started her first round in Building C, the newest section of the facility. Her footsteps echoed off the concrete walls as she walked down the long corridor, checking each unit. The smell hit her before she reached Unit C-47, a sweet, cloying odor that made her stomach turn. Jesus, she muttered, covering her nose with her sleeve. It smelled like something had died in there, which wasn't entirely unusual. People stored all kinds of things in these units, and sometimes they forgot about perishables. Last month, she'd found a unit full of rotting fish that some guy had planned to take on a camping trip. But this smell was different. It was worse. Maya checked her clipboard. Unit C-47 was rented by someone named Marcus Webb, paid up through the end of the month. She knocked on the metal door. Sometimes tenants worked late in their units, though it was against facility rules. There was no answer. The smell seemed to be getting stronger, seeping out from under the door. Maya tried the handle, expecting it to be locked, but it turned easily. The door rolled up with a rusty screech. The smell hit her like a physical blow, so strong that she stumbled backwards, gagging. Her flashlight beam swept across the unit, revealing something that made her blood freeze. Bodies. At least 6 of them, stacked against the wall like cordwood. Men, women, of all different ages, all in various stages of decay. Some looked fresh, maybe a day or two old. Others were older, much older. Maya's scream caught in her throat as her flashlight beam settled on something else. Movement. One of the bodies, a middle-aged woman in a torn floral dress, was twitching. Her fingers flecked slowly, and her head turned toward the light with a wet, grinding sound. The woman's eyes opened. They were cloudy white, like cataracts, but they fixed on Maya with unmistakable hunger. The woman's mouth opened, revealing black gums and broken teeth, and she let out a low moan that seemed to come from somewhere deep in her chest. Maya stumbled backwards as the woman began to move, rolling up the pile of bodies with unnatural, jerky movements. Her limbs bent at wrong angles, but she just kept coming, pulling herself across the concrete floor toward the open door. No, no, no! Maya whispered, fumbling for her radio. Derek! Derek, I need... The radio crackled with static. Maya, what's your... Derek's voice cut out as something crashed in the background of his transmission, and then silence. More movement in the unit. The other bodies were starting to stir. A man in a business suit sat up slowly, his neck bent at an unnatural angle. A teenage boy with most of his face missing began to crawl toward the door. The sweet smell of decay grew stronger, mixing with something else. Something that smelled like ozone and burnt metal. Maya slammed the unit door shut and ran. Her footsteps pounded against the concrete as she sprinted down the corridor, her flashlight beam dancing wildly. She had to get to the front office. Had to call the police. Had to... The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a few seconds later, bathing everything in a sickly red glow. Maya's radio crackled again, but instead of Derek's voice, she heard something else. Moaning. Low, hungry sounds that seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. She reached the junction between buildings C and B and stopped. The smell was here too, wafting from the other corridors. How many units? How many bodies? A metallic bang echoed through the building, the sound of a storage unit door being forced open from the inside. Then another, and another. Maya's hand shook as she tried Derek's number on her cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. She tried 911, but the call wouldn't go through. No signal. How was that possible? She'd had full bars just an hour ago. A shuffling sound came from behind her. Maya spun around and saw them emerging from the red-lit corridor, figures moving with that same jerky, unnatural gait. The woman in the floral dress was on the lead, her arms reaching out as she moaned. Behind her came the businessman, the teenager, and others Maya hadn't seen clearly before. They moved slowly, but with terrible purpose. And there were so many of them. Maya ran toward Building A, hoping to reach the main office, but as she rounded the corner, she saw more figures emerging from that direction too. They seemed to be coming from everywhere, shambling out of the shadows with their cloudy eyes and grasping hands. She ducked into the nearest corridor, Building B, storage unit 200 through 299. Her breathing was ragged, and her heart was hammering so hard that she was sure they could hear it. She pressed herself against the wall and tried to think. What the hell was happening? This has to be some kind of sick joke, some elaborate prank. People didn't just come back from the dead. They didn't... A hand grabbed her shoulder. Maya spun around, swinging her flashlight like a weapon. It connected with something soft and wet, and she heard a grunt of pain that sounded almost human. Almost. In the red emergency lighting, she could see him clearly. Derek, but not Derek. His face was pale and slack, his eyes cloudy white like the others. Dark fluid leaked from his nose and mouth, and there was a huge bite mark on his neck, the flesh torn and ragged. Derek? Maya whispered, backing away. Derek, what happened to you? He opened his mouth and let out the same low moan, reaching for her with fingers that were already turning black at the tip. Maya swung the flashlight again, catching him in the temple. Derek stumbled but didn't fall. Didn't even seem to feel it. Maya ran deeper into Building B, her mind racing. If he was like them, then whatever was happening had already spread beyond the storage units. How far? How many people? She tried her phone again. Still no signal. But wait, there was a landline in the manager's office in Building A. If she could just... The lights came back on, the normal fluorescent brightness replacing the emergency red. For a moment, Maya felt a surge of hope. Maybe someone had fixed whatever had gone wrong. Maybe help was coming. Then she heard them. Dozens of voices, all moaning in unison. The sound echoed through the buildings, bouncing off concrete walls and metal doors. And underneath it, she could hear something else. The sound of storage units' doors being ripped open, metal screeching against metal. Maya found herself in front of Unit B-242. The lock was broken, hanging loose from the door handle. The unit was open, empty except for a few scattered boxes and something else. Scientific equipment. Microscopes, computers, glass containers filled with strange, glowing liquid. There was a notebook on one of the tables, filled with handwriting. Maya grabbed it and flipped through the pages, her flashlight illuminating the words. Day 12. The compound is working better than expected. Cellular regeneration is occurring even in severely degraded tissue samples. However, there seems to be a loss of higher brain function. Day 18. Subject 7 became mobile today. It shows no recognition of previous identity of relationships. Responds only to stimulus, movement, sound, the presence of living tissue. Day 23. I've made a mistake. The compound isn't just regenerating cells, it's spreading them. Every organism it touches becomes a carrier. I have to destroy the samples before. The handwriting became shaky, then stopped altogether. Maya looked at the glowing containers more closely. Several were cracked. Their contents leaked across the table and floor. The same ozone and metal smell she'd noticed earlier was stronger here. A shadow fell across the doorway. Maya looked up to see them gathering. Derek, the woman in the floral dress, the businessman, and at least a dozen others. They stood there swaying slightly, their cloudy eyes fixed on her, waiting. Maya clutched the notebook tighter. According to what she'd read, these things were drawn to movement and sound. If she stayed perfectly still, maybe they would lose interest and wander away. She held her breath and tried not to move a muscle. The creature stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then slowly, they began to shuffle away, their moans fading as they moved toward other parts of the facility. Maya waited until she couldn't hear them anymore, then crept out the unit. She had to get to that landline, had to call for help before this spread any further. She made her way through the corridors, moving as quietly as possible. Twice she had to duck into empty units as groups of the creatures shambled past. They seemed to be searching for something, or someone. The front office was in sight when she heard the sound of breaking glass from outside. Maya peered through one of the narrow windows and saw vehicles in the parking lot. Police cars, ambulances, even what looked like military trucks. Men in hazmat suits were setting up some kind of perimeter. Help, finally. Maya ran toward the front door, but it wouldn't open. The electronic lock system was engaged, something that only happened during facility lockdowns. She pounded on the glass, waving at the figures outside. One of them saw her and spoke into a radio. Maya couldn't hear what he was saying, but she could read his lips. We have a survivor inside. The relief was overwhelming. Maya sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face. It was over. Whatever nightmare this had been, it was finally over. Then she heard a voice over a loudspeaker. Attention! This facility is under quarantine. No one enters or leaves until the situation is contained. Maya's blood went cold. Quarantine? But she wasn't infected. She was fine. She just needed to get out. Needed to... The notebook. She still had the notebook with every description of how the compound spread. Every organism it touches becomes a carrier. Maya looked down at her hands. They were covered in the same glowing residue she'd seen in Unit B-242. She'd been in that room for several minutes, breathing the air, touching the contaminated surfaces. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass door, pale, frightened, but still human, still alive. For now. Outside, the figures in hazmat suits continued their work, setting up equipment she didn't recognize. One of them held up a device that beeped rapidly when pointed toward the building. Maya's radio crackled to life one last time, but instead of static or Derek's voice, she heard something that made her blood freeze. Her own voice, calling out just as she had earlier. Derek! Derek, I need... But she wasn't speaking. Her mouth wasn't moving at all. The beeping from outside grew faster. Maya looked at her hands again. The glowing residue was spreading, creeping up her arms like some kind of luminescent infection. And underneath her skin, she could see her veins beginning to darken. The moaning started softly. So soft. She almost didn't notice at first. But it was there, coming from somewhere deep in her chest. A sound she couldn't control, couldn't stop. Through the glass door, Maya could see the figures in hazmat suits backing away from the building. One of them spoke into his radio again, and this time Maya could hear him clearly through the building's intercom system. Containment failed. Recommend immediate sterilization of the entire facility. The lights began to flash. Red, then white, then red again. Somewhere in the distance, Maya could hear a countdown beginning. She turned away from the door and walked back into the building, her movements already becoming stiff and unnatural. The notebook fell from her hands as her fingers began to blacken at the tips. Behind her, the other creatures emerged from the corridors and storage units. Derek was there, still in his Shadowbrook Storage uniform. The woman in the floral dress, the businessman, dozens of others, all shambling forward, their arms outstretched. Maya opened her mouth to scream, but only that low, hungry moan came out, and the countdown reached 0. Epilogue. From the Millbrook County Gazette, 3 days later. Hazmat incident claims lives at local storage facility. A gas leak at Shadowbrook Storage resulted in the deaths of 2 employees and several customers Tuesday night. According to county officials, a chemical spill from illegally stored materials created toxic conditions that proved fatal to anyone exposed. The facility has been permanently closed and will be demolished next week. County Health Department officials stressed that there is no ongoing danger to the community. The family of the deceased have been asked for privacy during this time. In an unrelated story, several residents of nearby Millbrook reported unusual behavior among local wildlife, with several pets and farm animals displaying what veterinarians describe as unprecedented aggression. Officials say there is no connection between those incidents and the storage facility accident. The newspaper clipping was found 3 weeks later, in the pocket of a hiker whose body was discovered along the Millbrook Trail. The hiker has been dead for at least 2 weeks, but his body showed signs of recent movement. His eyes were cloudy white, and his fingernails were black. The search for other hikers reported missing, and the area continues. So, I kind of like the idea of having a story where it's just straight up like a man-made virus. A lot of the ones I've done, it's either they don't ever actually explain what happened, or it's some kind of paranormal thing. So it's kind of interesting to me to have some kind of virus created in a random storage facility. I can't remember who recommended a storage facility worker, but here it is. If you remember that you're the person that recommended it, thank you. But thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed the story. Come back next time for some more scary stories. And as always, remember your ears. Bye.